Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Rad Gaming Podcast. I'm Pescador, and in this episode of the podcast, I try something completely different. I talk to my oldest childhood friend, Nick, the creator of Cento-Fiori. We discuss his political views and how video games play a role in that, artificial intelligence and why it really creeps me out, and why I should start watching Black Mirror again. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Cento-Fiori. That's right, Cento-Fiori. It is the lifestyle, it is the fashion brand, and you can find all that at Cento-Fiori.com. That is CENTO-FIORI.com. And the Rad Gaming Podcast is part of Big Heads Media. With that said, let's get on to the podcast. We used to play video games constantly when we were younger. I mean, we used to play, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Xbox. What, am I missing something?
Well, when you say Xbox, you're talking about 360, right? Because I don't remember really playing with you through the original Xbox.
I mean, didn't you come over a few times and play Halo?
Well, now that I think about it, you were the first person to show me Halo 2 online, so yeah. I guess we did.
Yeah, I had to think about that.
Probably PlayStation 2, didn't you have that?
Yeah.
I had it.
We played GTA a lot. We switched off, which is...
And then, of course, PC games. You got me into RuneScape.
Yeah, man. I was super hooked on RuneScape for, I don't know, a couple of years. That was pretty bad. I did nothing but play RuneScape.
Yeah, if it wasn't for you, I don't know if I would have played half the games that I played.
What was your favorite game growing up, though?
Just in general, or favorite game that we played together?
Both. What was your favorite game that we played together?
Let me think. I don't know. I guess probably GoldenEye or Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo, or probably the first Gears of War for Xbox 360.
Oh yeah, I was actually going to say Gears of War for mine as well.
The reason that stands out to me is because that was one of the games where we spent the entire night playing until we beat it, which I didn't really do that much when I was younger, so that was a cool experience.
Did we beat it the first night, or did we take 2 nights to do that? I honestly don't remember.
Pretty sure we beat it the first night, man, because by the end of the game, I was just not feeling very good. I remember remember what the camera would do when you were running with your character? It would get all shaky.
Yeah, I remember.
I was just getting super dizzy and like kind of nauseous the whole time. Like I couldn't look at the TV after a few hours.
Didn't we do the same thing with Halo 2 though? I could have swore that we played the whole way through on Legendary. Multiple times.
I think you did that with someone else.
I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure it was you. Because I remember taking it over to your house and actually playing it there. But...
yeah, we definitely played together. I just don't know if we beat the whole thing.
I'm pretty sure we did.
But aside from the games that I played with you, I'd have to say... The games I was probably most addicted to were RuneScape and then America's Army, which were both.
Oh
PC
man, I forgot about America's Army. We used to play that all the time.
Excuse me. Yeah, they were both free to play games, and they were both for the PC.
Yeah, I remember that you would constantly want to play. What was the bridge map? I can't even remember what it was called.
I think it was just called Bridge.
Really, that simple? Okay,
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they still have that map. They just changed it a lot, and it kind of breaks my heart because I'm still loyal and still love the original way that they had that map.
I gotta get back to playing it. It's been way too long, but I know that you're up to date with a lot of stuff that's going on in politics, a lot of things that are going on in the news for the most part. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you feel about how Walmart is kind of handling the whole unfortunate shooting that happened in El Paso? What they claim to be doing is taking out advertisements and demos in the store that basically depicts violent video games and handguns.
Well, before I go into all that, I just want to start off by saying that I'm probably going to come across as being very opinionated and kind of a dick in this podcast because that's just the way I am about this stuff. But like, to be honest, like for a while, I was doing a ton of research for the sake of arguing with people just to win arguments. But like recently, I've just come to the point where I'm just exhausted with American politics, and I think a lot of people are, and I've been removing myself from social media for that reason. And I just like I'm trying to care a lot less about politics these days because I just come to the realization that it doesn't add any value to my life. Like I don't benefit from it. It definitely doesn't help out any of my relationships because I think a lot of people have opposing political beliefs from me. So
Yeah.
I've just been trying to like really chill out on all that stuff. But I mean, if you're gonna ask me the question, I'm gonna give you the answer. So basically, I think it's ridiculous. It's just the same thing as everything else in American politics these days, where people feel powerless, so they just want to come up with any little boycott that they can to try to make a difference. Like in their mind, they feel like they're making a real big difference and everything, but it doesn't really solve the issue. Like Walmart is not the culprit here. They're not the people to blame. And I mean, not only do I disagree with the boycott, but I also disagree with the way Walmart handled everything because I thought that the whole debate and the argument about violent video games causing mass shootings and all that stuff, I thought that was put to bed a long time ago. Because I remember in the 90s when Doom was out and other violent video games like Mortal Kombat were out, I remember that was a huge debate in the news and with politics.
Yeah.
And I feel like over time, as we got older, as the older generations died off and our generation's starting to become like more influential and powerful out there, I thought that people didn't really blame video games anymore. So it's just pretty crazy that that whole thing's being brought back now.
So you don't side with Walmart, or you don't side with the people that are actually boycotting Walmart because of their actions they've taken because of this.
No, I think everyone has good intentions, but I don't think that they're doing necessarily the right thing.
And so for this, I guess, spike in violence that we've been hearing about recently, do you feel like video games leads to violent tendencies in people?
No, I mean, I think there are special cases, like for example, the Columbine shooting. I remember that the guys who took part in that, they were huge fans of Doom, or at least the one guy was.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could say that about anything. Like if it wasn't video games, people would be blaming it on movies, or if it wasn't movies, people would be blaming it on like trap rappers who talk about shooting each other all the time. And if it wasn't for that, it would be like novels where they go to war or something like that. I mean, it's all fantasy. You have to look at it like fantasy. And I don't know if you've ever watched like a Quentin Tarantino interview, but he's constantly getting interviewed about how violent his movies are, and he just always gets so frustrated because he's always just like what don't you understand about fantasy? Like this is just pretend. It's not real. And I mean, it really comes down to parenting. If you're the type of person that blames it on video games, just don't let your kids play mature games until they're of an age where you think that they can handle it.
See, and there's also I guess, the devil's advocate kind of look on it that sometimes you can't help your kid playing games. If you say, I go over your house when I was a kid, and your mom allowed you to play violent video games, and I go over your house and play them there.
I mean, I remember when we were younger and situations like that happened, like one parent would just tell the other kid's parents, like, look, I know you guys allow your kids to play these games, but I don't let my kid play them, so I'd appreciate it if you don't let them play when my kid's over your house.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's not that complicated. People make it out to be so difficult when it's really not.
And do you think that, um, video games in general add frustration to people's lives to make them more violent.
No, I think if anything, it takes out frustration. I think video games are a great way to decompress after a stressful day. Don't you agree? I mean, I think that's why a lot of people end up playing video games after work. Like after a long stressful day at work, you're not looking for something else that's going to increase your stress levels. You're looking for something to kind of chill out. I don't know if you've ever watched the show House of Cards, but the main character in that, like after he would come home, he'd just be playing Call of Duty, and that's just like uh, a fictional example right there of what video games are for. It's just for fun, for entertainment.
And there's a lot of people that I feel don't understand that aspect of video games. They feel that, you know, what they see is what they interpret, and what they interpret is what they, like, the actions they actually carry out. But
right, like you remember that whole outrage that happened over Call of Duty a few years ago, where they gave you the opportunity to be in an airport and basically do a mass shooting.
Oh yeah. I do remember that, actually. It's been, what is that, Modern Warfare 2, I believe?
I think so. I mean, I remember there being some outrage over that, but I'm surprised that there wasn't a lot more than what I remember there being.
I think that at the time, like, this wasn't that huge an issue as it is now. So, I mean, that's probably why it wasn't. But as far back as I can remember, though, I mean, there's so many games that were, like, quote unquote violent, you know. But I don't know if it's the just abundance of media and social media in general that makes it seem like it's like the world's more violent these days, or people are just actually more violent. But I mean,
if you just look at statistics, think about it this way. Like, you do realize that GTA is one of the most successful video games of all time, if not the most successful video game. I don't know what the numbers are right now, but the numbers for GTA are pretty unreal, and that was always one of the video games that people were outraged over for being too violent. But if you look at statistics, I mean, do those numbers really correlate with an increase in?
You mean as compared to, like, how long it's been out?
Yeah. Mass shootings have been going up recently, but I don't think that correlates with GTA, because GTA has been around much longer than we've seen this huge spike in mass shooting.
So that's a good point, in the sense that, I mean, I remember playing GTA like 3 and Vice City when I was younger, and I wasn't I didn't feel any violent tendencies while playing that game, and I played that game a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, then again, it could be personality. Some people feel that some people have an addictive personality, and that kind of feeds into my next topic, in a sense that you see a bunch of people suing companies such as, like, Epic Games for having loot crates because they feel it's gambling. And I think that parents feel that it plays into the whole mindset of video game disorder and addiction to video games, because it's considered quote unquote gambling. So I just wanted to get your opinion on this.
I mean, I'm not super opinion about the loot crate thing, because in my opinion is my next sentence. In my opinion, like, if anyone is negatively affected by loot crates, I feel like that's your own fault, because, like, I've never really been mad about loot crates, other than the fact that any game that could be a solid game otherwise, if it weren't for the loot crates, it's kind of a disappointment to me, because there are a lot of games out there that I probably would enjoy if it weren't for the loot crates. But if there's a game that has loot crates, I just refuse to play it, because I feel like, I don't know, I already paid $60 for the game. I'm not going to continue paying just to keep up with all the other competitors online. So, I don't know. I think the whole loot crate thing's blown out of proportion, and I think people should boycott those games that have loot crates. But no one is smart enough to do that, apparently.
You think that loot crates are terrible for gamers to be, or games to have for gamers in general? You just feel that, like, I mean, a lot of loot crates, and I'll play devil's advocate here, that they're actually mostly for skins anymore. They're not really adding anything different to the game except for just looks.
It just amazes me how many people are actually willing to pay for that stuff. Because
Yeah.
I've never paid for skins in my entire life. Like, I've never been that into the game where I feel like it's real life, and instead of upping my real life wardrobe, I'm updating the wardrobe of my character online. I don't know, it's so strange to me.
It's strange to me because we didn't grow up with that kind of concept. So when the game was free to play, like you said, we played was it America's Army? We didn't have to buy. We never bought anything. Like they didn't ask us to buy anything, and we never did. So
yeah, and honestly, if they even had that stuff when I was younger, I wouldn't have been able to buy it because my parents didn't give me their credit card when I was younger. I don't know what parents these days are doing, but it seems like parenting these days has changed a lot compared to the way I was parented, because my parents would not give me $5 or $10 for virtual clothes. That's so strange and such a waste of money.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, some people don't see it as such because they feel like they didn't pay for the game, so why not pay for something else cosmetic to look better in the game? So
I mean, I'm not trying to demonize anyone that's into that stuff. There's always going to be someone who's like a fanatic about something, and I'm all for it. If you really enjoy it that much and you want to spend the extra money for it, I'm sure there's a lot of people who criticize me about the stuff that I spend money on too, but it just amazes me of the numbers, like how many people are really willing to spend that money on virtual clothes. It amazes me. And I don't know, I think that most of them are probably little kids with their parents' money, but again, I don't know why parents are letting their kids buy that stuff. It's so strange.
I don't know if you listened to one of the previous podcasts, but we actually talked about somewhat a kid spent like over $3,000 on a video game, and that's getting like add-on stuff. Like it was like cosmetic things, like kind of like loot crates.
Intentional, or was it an accident?
Intentional, but the parents claimed it as an accident, but it was after a certain amount of time, so they couldn't get their money back. So they ended up paying $3,000 on a free-to-play game, basically.
Well, how was the kid even able to do it? Like, did
honestly,
they have their parents' credit card or what?
In the article, it states that the credit card information was saved, so they were able to make these purchases without the parents' knowledge.
Okay, well, the parents shouldn't blame anyone but themselves. I mean, obviously they're gonna blame the kid, but who parented that kid? You did, so you're kind of at fault there.
I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that they probably should have, got rid of the credit card information, because I know that there's ways to enable parental controls to stop that kind of like purchases from happening. And I know if you use like iPhones and things like that, they actually make you put the password in it again before you make a purchase of anything else. Mm-hmm. So,
well, one piece of financial advice that I got a long time ago, I don't know where I got it from, but this has always stuck with me, is that no one's going to care about your money more than you. So like, that's why I've never believed in getting a financial advisor or anything like that, because at the end of the day, if I'm interested in growing my money and keeping the money that I made, like, I should be the one responsible of taking care of that. I'm not going to pay someone else to do it for me. And in that sense, if you're some little kid's parent and you care about your money, don't just like give your credit card to your kid for him to do who knows what with. Like, if you care about your money, if you're a responsible adult, you got to know what's happening with your credit card. You got to look at your statements. You got to not just give your child the numbers and trust that they're going to handle it responsibly when they're 9 years old or 12 years old or whatever. Just think a little bit before you do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. Use your brain. If you're a parent, like, and you can afford to pay for your kids' video games, then you should be smart enough to know that stuff.
So with everything we just talked about comes basically back to how parents kind of see video games. I feel that a lot of people are quick to blame video games in general. Even politicians, they're very quick to blame video games. And this even is like Donald Trump even came out and said it. I'm not demonizing him for saying. This is an actual fact. He actually came out and said that video games are to blame for the recent shooting that just happened.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I know we talked about this the other day when you visited me, but oh yeah, by the way, you should like tell the audience why we're speaking over Discord instead of like doing this in person, because they probably think it's weird. If we're friends, why aren't we just like doing it in person?
Moved out of the Pennsylvania area about 4 years ago, and I think you were living in New York at the time, right?
Yeah,
we were friends way back. So, we were friends since preschool. I mean, but we constantly hang out with each other all throughout, I guess, elementary school, and then in high school you went to a different high school.
Well, in middle school I did. Like in middle school, it was kind of like
right.
when we grew apart for a bit, and then somehow, I think I like hit you up on AOL Instant Messenger one day.
AOL.
Like we walked and like met in between both of our parents' houses.
And you live like what, 2 or 3 miles down the road from me? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, walking distance, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. But yeah, we would literally like ride back and forth between each other's houses all the time and play video games and shoot.
Yeah, but
and stuff like that,
bottom line is, I currently still, I live in Western Pennsylvania again, and Kenny does not. He moved down south. But yeah, back to your question. Yeah, we were talking about this the other day when you visited me. Like with the whole politician thing, like I told you the other day, it's kind of interesting how back in the day when people were outraged about the Columbine shooting, they were outraged about Doom and Mortal Kombat and GTA 3 and all those games. From what I remember, I mean, I don't have an article in front of me right now or anything, but from what I remember, it was mostly the Democrats that were super against all that stuff back then. And it was like the Republicans were more for like, because like, like Republicans are more for like the free market and all that stuff, and like your own choice, and Democrats are more for like regulating things and like bigger government and like kind of like telling you can't do certain things. But now these days it kind of seems like with the whole Trump thing, some of these Republicans now, they want to push the blame away from guns, which I'm not saying that the blame is on guns, but in order to like defend guns, because everyone's attacking them so much right now, they're now blaming things on video games.
Yeah.
And I don't think all Republicans are doing that. I think it's probably just the older generation, like a small percentage, and it's the out of touch people. I mean, like it's interesting because like with Trump, he's actually pretty in tune with a lot of things. Like for his age, you wouldn't think that he'd be so active on Twitter, but he is. You wouldn't think that he'd be like so good at like finding hilarious memes or coming up with hilarious jokes, but he's pretty good at that stuff. But like with stuff like this whole like violent video game thing, I just like if it was my guess, I don't think he ever has been into video games, and I don't know if he's ever even played video games. I'm sure he's played like Mario once or twice, but I just think he's out of touch with the whole thing. I don't think that he looks up statistics and looks up studies before he says things. I think that he's just kind of trying to skirt the blame from guns, because his base is all about guns and he's about guns and his son is about guns.
Yeah.
So that's just like an easy way out for him right now.
And we were talking about this, like you said, when I visited, and we were kind of touching upon the subject of it was possibly because, the NRA does fund, usually Republicans, just because they're a strong advocate of guns. So we think that maybe the reason why they're skirting around this and blaming it on video games is because they don't want to put the blame at all anywhere close to the word gun, because it could destroy their political campaign funds for the future. So,
but I think that that's just a terrible strategy, and I think like I was kind of doing a little bit of research before we started this podcast. Just I had some information I could bring, and from what I read, like Trump has done a few things for gun control already. Like he did signed into legislation last year. It's called Fix NICS Act of 2017. I'm not going to go in depth about that. I don't want to like bore everyone by reading that, but if you want to learn more about that, read up on it yourself. And then let's see here. Like even just recently after these couple mass shootings that just happened, I'm looking at an article right now. The headline says Republicans move to take the most significant gun control action in decades. So to me, it kind of is frustrating when people don't give certain people credit just because of their party or who they align with. I mean,
their affiliation, yeah.
Everyone has been asking for this type of stuff. Everyone's been asking for better gun control laws, stricter gun control laws, better background checks, and Republicans are trying to improve them. They're trying to make it happen, and they have been doing that. And I don't really see anyone giving them too much credit on that. It's actually quite the opposite. It seems like everyone who is a Democrat kind of ignores the facts that they're doing that. And then all the people who are Republicans, they're kind of angry and outraged that they're doing that. And I understand why they are outraged to a degree, because the whole idea of why that they don't want like tighter gun control and all of that is because they're afraid that, and it's for the same reason people are afraid of like someone like Bernie Sanders, where it's like, if you move one way, is it really going to stop at that, like whatever your campaign promise is right there, or is it going to keep pushing that way over time? And that's kind of what we're seeing, because like I said, last year, Trump made a move to create some gun control laws, and that wasn't good enough. So now gun control laws are getting tighter. And over time, are they going to keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter to the point where we no longer have a Second Amendment? That's exactly why the NRA fights so hard to defend the Second Amendment and to prevent all of these changes from happening, because they're just afraid, like, where's it going to stop? Where's it going to end?
Yeah. I mean, you could say that with any like political move that anyone does anymore. It's tough to, because the Constitution was written so long ago. It's tough to kind of adhere to the old ways and embrace the new ways, because with new technology, with new rise of new things. I mean, it's tough. Like, I don't think that anyone saw this many mass shootings like happening in American history, and have that like guns tied in with the amendment. I mean, it's extremely tough to kind of not like stand there and do nothing. I mean, because there is the Second Amendment, but there also is all this controversy that's going on right now. So where do you have to stand for all this? It's kind of really tough, and I'd hate to be a politician right now, because there's a lot of things, not just the Second Amendment, but there's a lot of things in the Constitution that's like, obviously it's written, it's still there, but can still be. You don't want to change anything because people are going to lose their minds, but like, you got to find a fine line between the two, that you can't like change anything for the amendments, or the Constitution in general. But it's tough. I mean, like, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think just based on like political ideologies. I try to think for myself, and I honestly try to like think about what is the truth. And I try to be moderate on a lot of issues, not for the sake of being moderate, but just so I can be open-minded enough to see the value in both sides, like both arguments. And on this one, where I stand right now is I'm a gun supporter, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We could get into that later if you want, but I'm a gun supporter. I believe in the Second Amendment. I think that there's a lot of value for having guns, which I know a lot of people disagree with, and I understand because I actually used to be like that. Like my dad he's a conservative guy, but he's actually against guns. Like he wants gun control. He doesn't think anyone should have guns. He says that there's no reason for them, and that's how I used to be too until a lot of these events have started happening over the past few years, and I dug in and did a lot of research, and now I've been able to formulate my own opinion on the matter. But at the same time, I think that I understand why people on the left and Democrats and everything, they're so outraged right now, and I'm outraged too. I don't think that anyone has the right to take anyone's life, let alone 20 to 60 people's lives or 3+ people's lives, because that's like what a mass shooting is. It's 3+ people's lives. Um, no one should be able to do that, and we need to find a way to stop this. Like whatever, not whatever it takes, because two wrongs don't make a right. But I think that there's a lot of solutions out there that people really aren't discussing in the mainstream media right now. And it's really frustrating, and it's frustrating the way Trump's handling all this.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating the way the NRA is handling all this. I even told you the other day, I was like, I'm an NRA supporter. I think that they do a lot of good, but I wish I could be their PR person, because I think that they're handling their PR terribly right now. I think that instead of coming across as just being super one-sided, like stuck in your ideology, and like you're not willing to budge, you're not even willing to like have a conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's bad. I mean, I don't want to say they don't want to have a conversation, because I remember I was like, I don't know, when was the Parkland shooting? I was like a year or two ago. I remember they had a town hall in Florida for that, and I remember I think it was like the spokeswoman of the NRA came, and she had a conversation with the students and with CNN about it. So I think in that respect, it was good that she was actually willing to converse with all of them. But the things that she was saying, like you could just tell that she wasn't really trying to come across as like being open-minded to what they were saying. And I think that they need to do a much better job of that. Like, even if they're unwilling to change the current gun laws on the books, at least show that you're trying to make an effort into figuring out what the problem is and resolving it. And I think that one thing that they could be doing right now is they could be donating a ton of money that they've been collecting from gun owners in order to do more research on mental health. Like if they came out and publicly told everyone, hey guys, like we really believe in the Second Amendment, but we're doing everything we can possible in order to make sure that a mass shooting like this never happens again in America. I think that that would be pretty reasonable and respectable, and I think a lot less people in America would demonize the NRA.
Yeah, I see. You have a different look than most people. So most people that align themselves with some, left or right, they're so entrenched in their ways of thinking that they see one thing or the other. Like if they're on the left or the right, one they'll either see, they want the Second Amendment and they don't care like at all about anything else. They just want the Second Amendment, and then the other side of the argument that they want no guns whatsoever.
Yeah,
but that doesn't really solve any, because it's not. There's always going to be two political parties, and they're always going to fight, and that's what sucks, because it's like they're always entrenched in their views, and they're never going to change because they believe that
the only person I've really been hearing like making statements that I really agree with lately has been Joe Rogan. Because if you listen to like some of his recent podcasts, like he doesn't demonize the NRA. He's demonizing like the like big pharma companies, because it's been shown that a lot of these shooters are taking crazy prescriptions. I don't know what they're taking, like antidepressants or something like that, but
it all deals with mental health for the most part.
Yeah, it's messing with their mind. and we just need to do something about the whole drug problem in America. And I think that it's a problem that's actually a lot easier to solve than people are making it out to be. But that would be a whole nother tangent that we'd be going down
Yeah.
if I continue talking about that.
But
But I
so
mean, another interesting problem that we need to talk more about in mainstream media is the idea of family. Like, I don't know what kind of family these shooters are coming from. Um, I'm like, I don't know if this is still true, but I remember at one point there was a statistic where it was like 26 out of the last 27 mass shooters in America were fatherless or something like that. They grew up without a father. And I think that especially for uh, younger men, younger gentlemen, like, you need to have a father figure to help raise you to become a man. It's very difficult for a mother to raise boys. Boys are notoriously tough to raise because a lot of us have a lot of energy when we're younger, and we have bad behavior, and we need someone to discipline us. And like me, for example, I think you can attest to this. Like, I'm kind of like, I don't think people can tell that I'm a hippie just by like looking at me. You might be able to tell by the way I talk, but I don't know, like, I'm the type of person where I'm always just like put out good vibes. Like, I don't like negativity. I don't like being surrounded by toxic people. And
yeah,
when I was younger, I actually had like some violent traits. Like, I did get into fights when I was younger. Uh, I I was pretty rambunctious, and a lot of people probably would have wanted to prescribe me like Ritalin or something when I was younger. But thankfully, I had good parents that kind of that raised me to have good values, and over
yeah,
time, I matured and became an adult and was surrounded by the right people,
yeah.
and learned that that's not the way you're supposed to act.
And I know that not only is it fall on the parents to raise the children, it's just it has to also take part. I mean, parents can only do so much. I'll be honest, but it also comes down to who your kids are friends with. I know growing up that I was raised the same way as my other friend, and unfortunately, he kind of got into a bad crowd, and he ended up doing hard drugs. Ended up going to a jail a few different times, and unfortunately, that's just this how the story goes. I mean, parents can only do so much. I mean, there's a lot of things that can play into this, and that's why it is such an interesting topic.
Yeah. I mean, you're always gonna have bad eggs and everything,
Yeah,
but my whole thing with the family is like, yeah, you don't have. I mean, you do have control of who your kids hanging out with to some extent. Like, I remember when I was younger, when I was in elementary school, and I had like a certain friend at school, and I asked my parents if a certain friend could come over. Like, they'd kind of be questioning me about what kind of kid this is, and like
yeah,
they wanted to know like his background. So I mean, there are certain things that parents can do to kind of like help direct the child into hanging out with the right crowd. But like, I do agree with you that they can't they can't like control all of that. But if more people were raised in a more traditional type family with like a mother and a father
yeah,
who have good values, I think that there would be a lot fewer of those bad eggs out there that you'd have to be worried about your child hanging out with. And the statistics are pretty insane, man. Like, if you look at charts and stuff over the last century, I mean, especially in the African American community, fatherless kids have just like, the numbers have just exploded. And I know that they're not like the type of people who are involved with mass shootings, but I mean, if you look at like homicide rates, like just shootings in general, you look at like places like Chicago and places like Baltimore who have high homicide rates, and a lot of that has to do with the African American community. I think that those numbers would be way better if the numbers of kids raised by two parents were a lot higher. And I think more people need to talk about that type of stuff. And they need to talk about why that's becoming such an issue these days. And a lot of it has to do with incentives that the government gives, which is like right now there's like I think I don't know what the name of it is or how to explain it the proper way, but I know that the government gives single mothers more welfare than they do if you're married. So I know a lot of people do choose not to be married so they can get more money from the government.
When it comes to mental disorders, do you feel like the government is doing enough to really help out those issues though?
Yeah, and like the mental disorders, a huge portion of that does come from like your childhood. Like whether it's like I mean, it usually comes from childhood trauma, and a lot of that has to do with just like first of all, like probably living in bad like having bad living conditions, living in poverty. Maybe your dad beat your mom when you were younger and you saw it. Maybe you were around like a lot of violence. Maybe your uncle was a drug addict or something. Who knows? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that. And like again, like I said, if America started putting more value into having good families with good values and having closer, tight knit communities, I think we'd have to worry about that a lot less.
Do you think that uh, video games are to blame for a lot of these issues, though? I mean, they talked a lot about the video game disorder, and they've obviously made it a thing. The World Health Organization came out and said the video game disorder is a thing, and there are a lot of younger generation that has this disorder. And if the question I have is, do you think that these violent video games play any effect into or helping with that disorder? I mean, if they get addicted to playing a video game and also it being violent, do you think that causes them to be that way per se?
I don't think it's the violence. I think if anything, it's probably like the social media aspect of video games. Like, and I think video game companies have actually done a really good job of countering this to the point where it's like either almost non-existent or it's just like not even a major problem. Which is that like in video games, if you're in an audio chat or a texting chat or something, people can say some really nasty things to each other, and that just creates frustration and hate and anger and resentment. And a lot of that, I mean, you see a lot of that on Twitter and social media and all of that stuff. And like if you look at statistics and charts and everything, the amount of girls that are cutting, like little girls, like teenagers and everything, that are cutting themselves these days is unreal compared to what it used to be. And like girls with eating disorders.
So let me get this straight. Are you kind of saying that it could have a correlation with the rise of social media more than, say, video games?
I think it's definitely more social media than video games because there's a lot of bullying that goes on in social media, but it's not even just the bullying. Like I think that there's always been bullying even in person, but with social media it's different because like bullying back in the day when we were little kids ended whenever you got off that school bus and you went back to your parents' house. Then you knew at the rest of the day and even like the whole weekend, you didn't really have to deal with any of that bullying that you might have dealt with at school. But now with social media, and it's been shown that it happens a lot more so with girls than it does with boys. Is that even whenever girls like are out of school, they're constantly getting picked on from their school and social media. And it's not even just that, but it's also like with Instagram, especially, girls are constantly comparing themselves to gorgeous girls online who are unrealistically gorgeous. Like they're using filters, they're using Photoshop, and they're always taking pictures in like unbelievable, like beautiful places that it just seems like a fairy tale. Like the internet is not really real life. Like it's just like a glimpse of someone's life. It's not their entire life. Like, I'll even admit, if you look at my Instagram, that's not what my real life looks like at all. If I posted my real life on Instagram, like my Instagram would be really lame and really boring. But I mean,
So
I'm not really posting that stuff to try to make other people jealous, and I know some people do that, but that is the reality of it. People do envy others by seeing what other people have, and I hear a lot of people complaining about that stuff. Like, I have a few friends who feel like they're not doing that well in life, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're constantly comparing themselves to others who are the same age and appear to be so much further along in life, but they actually probably aren't in real life.
do you think going forward there's going to be any legislation that's going to be passed in order to really cut down on violent video games, like advertisements, just maybe, I guess, depicting them or hiding them in such high regard, like kind of cutting back on them on esports or things like that?
Wait, any regulations on what? You cut off. You're getting cut off a little bit.
Any regulations on, I guess, advertisements for violent video games like Modern Warfare or like Grand Theft Auto, or maybe kind of cutting back on those type of games, maybe esports competitions, things like that?
I mean, I think there already are regulations in place. For example, I don't think video games always had like the ratings on them that they do, where it's like, oh, it's E for everyone, or it's like M for mature. Like, that happened over time whenever people started complaining and
Yeah.
causing outrage. So that's a regulation right there. I'm sure there's other regulations too. Like, I don't recall ever really seeing like extreme violence in a commercial for a video game. Mortal Kombat,
yeah,
like show blood on television or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I think that they're trying to stick away from any like shooting in general. At least Walmart is trying to stay away from that kind of depiction, just because they want to remain sensitive to the issue of the mass shooting that happened.
Mm-hmm. And that's their choice. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't even know what they were doing. Like, do you have a specific example of like something that they were doing that they just stopped because of all this recently?
I know that Walmart stopped selling pistols back in the day, and they also stopped selling assault rifles.
I'm talking about
over
like
time,
the video
but
game.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know about video games. I just know that recently they are going to stop with that kind of stuff.
I think if anything, it's probably more of like a PR thing. They're probably just kind of like saying that to kind of like sound like they're doing something good about the whole thing, but I didn't think that they're like advertising for violent video games was even an issue to begin with. I don't recall ever seeing anything that crazy in Walmart before, you know?
Yeah.
Have you?
No, I don't. As far back as I can remember, even demos in Walmart, I don't think that I've played anything insane. Like, I didn't play Grand Theft Auto in Walmart, and I'm pretty sure that they have like E games on there, like games that are rated E, on there anyway. So you're right. I mean, I can't think of anything, but I mean, with the amount of pushback that parents are getting, because let's be honest, parents, as soon as they hear something in the media, they're all on board with it. Like, I'll be honest, my mom is a huge person on that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that the video games thing is what struck home for her, but a lot of things that she hears on the news, she thinks is the gospel truth. And not to mention, if there's statistics done, I mean, you have to look at who did the statistics, like who actually ran the tests.
And like, you could like bring up an argument about just about anything, and if you find a statistic that argues against it, I bet you I can find a statistic that argues for it. And
Correct.
we could even be looking at the same exact statistic, but just looking at it from a different perspective. You could be thinking about it just in a completely different way than I think about it, and it's not even necessarily your fault. Like, this is actually like, I don't know if there's been studies done or what, but I've read this countless times where it's like, uh, you can pretty much predict whether someone's going to become like more of a Republican or a Democrat at a pretty early age just based on like their personality traits, I guess. And that's just kind of like something that you don't really have a whole lot of control over. So, um, it's just kind of like genetics, man. A lot of people are just born with a certain way of thinking. Like, that's just the brain that you have. And yeah, you can like kind of change the way you perceive things over time. But for example, like women are never going to think about a certain argument that you have with like your girlfriend or fiance. Like, she's not going to necessarily look at it the same way you're going to look at it. You know what I mean? Like, there's just differences in the way that genders can view things, and there's also differences in the way that like even people of the same genders view things, just like based in politics.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Like, for
always two
example, like,
sides to a story. So
I don't know if you know any guys who really believe in Bitcoin, but
I do.
what I found with a lot of people who believe in like things like that, that like just they just like really get behind the latest trend, is like, I just think some people have a better like bullshit detector than other people in their brains. And I know that's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like rude to say, I guess, but that's just like the honest like truth. I think that's what I believe. Like, I've just always thought that I have a pretty good bullshit radar, so um I don't know. Some people just can't see things. They can't see through all the fluff that's produced in the media sometimes.
yeah. Do you think that video game companies are going to have to really start watching what they put out due to all these issues that, or even companies that are coming through and saying that they're going to change the way that they do work around video games because of the backlash and they're getting from these mass shootings or these incidences in which people are reporting on anymore?
Wait, you're talking about the like the video game developers, or what were you saying?
Yeah, like video game companies. Do you think they're going to really like take a step back and think twice before they develop, GTA, 6 or what have you? Do you think that they're going to like really, I guess, think twice before they really start designing new games that depict violence?
I think it's like anything else. Some people are and some people aren't. There's always going to be a market for it.
Yeah.
So there's probably always going to be someone to like feed that portion of the market, because it's kind of the way the free market and like capitalism works. If there's demand for it, then there's probably going to be someone who's going to step in and supply it so they can make some money off of it. And then there's going to be people who have like certain specific ethics and ideologies or whatever completely against it, and they're going to create something that isn't violent. They're going to create like the next Crash Bandicoot or something like that, like something that little kids can play.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous about what the future has to offer, just because that there's so much negative light shed on video games. I don't think they really encompass the positives. Also, like, I've known many friendships that I've actually got over video games.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things that they don't really suggest about the social aspect of games and how positively it impacts people.
I really don't think that that's something that you really have to worry about too much. And I understand why you are worried about it, because anything that you like love and you're passionate about, you want people to kind of like see why you love it and like see all the good things in it that you see. But at the end of the day, for how many people there are that like don't see that stuff and they think that like video games are so negative, I don't think it's really going to have like much of an impact on anything, just because the video game industry has grown so much that it's pretty much unstoppable.
Oh,
Like,
it's like
video games are
what,
going nowhere.
hundreds of billions of dollars, about like net worth in general, just like video games in general. Yeah, they're not going anywhere. But
I mean, I do think that, like, all right, for example, we live in an age where everyone is really focused on being politically correct, because people get outraged over everything, even if it's like a Quentin Tarantino movie where they're saying the N-word the whole time, even though it's just like make believe, or it's like a movie about slaves and like that's what you would expect or something. Like in movies, wouldn't you agree that, or in video games, I mean, wouldn't you agree that video games these days are a lot more politically correct? Like they're not.
Yes.
I don't think that they're as willing to take the risks that companies used to take.
Even it could even same could even be said for comedians. I mean, I think that we've seen many people like really cut back on their comedy because of the backlash that they get for even coming close to the line anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and like one thing that I've noticed with comedians, the ones that are still kind of anti-PC, which is like the ones that I can think of off the top of my head would be like mostly like Dave Chappelle, and then kind of Joe Rogan, but I think Joe Rogan kind of like pretends to be more anti-PC than he actually is, because I feel like every time that he brings up a topic that people are going to be outraged about, he always gives an introduction that prepares you for it. He's pretty much like, he explains where he's coming from and like why you shouldn't be outraged over it, which I agree that's actually a good way of putting it, just so people aren't offended if you don't actually mean for people to be offended by it. But
yeah.
I kind of miss the days where comedians said things that come across as rude and they didn't feel the need to like fluff it up or apologize for it, because it's comedy, man. Like, you have to take comedy for what it is. No one should apologize for telling a joke unless you're like intentionally trying to hurt someone. But if you're someone like the creators of South Park, they come at everyone, man. So like if anyone's going to be outraged, everyone should be outraged, and they don't apologize for it. But I do think that there are certain cases where a comedian might say something and it's just simply not funny, but at the end of the day, it's all about perception. Maybe I'm not their target audience or something.
No, but it leaves a ton of questions to be answered, I guess, in the future, just because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how people these days have such a huge voice now and what companies can and cannot do. It blows my mind. So I guess,
well, that's
the
beauty of capitalism.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of capitalism, because we don't need government regulation in order to make changes in society. If the people want changes, those changes will happen naturally. We decide for ourselves. We don't need the government to do it. We're making the call to give our money to certain companies or to refuse to give our money to certain companies.
Yeah. This has been a very insane, like, this is the first time I've ever done something that talks about politics, and I'm actually really shocked because, like I said, it seems like you have a very open mind about like different views, and you kind of really take in consideration how another party or affiliation might view it. So I don't know if we're going to do any more political ones, but I don't know. I have to see what the people have to say about it in general. But I'm actually excited that it went a different way for once, and we'll have to see what I guess video games has to offer in the future, because I'm actually really interested to see, because people might be able to sway video games in a good, positive direction. Who knows? But
well, the thing that could get scary though is the whole virtual reality thing. If we continue to have games like GTA, but it's like with virtual reality, then I can kind of see where things are starting to get a little iffy, like it's type of thing, because it's like we might eventually get to the point where it's hard to determine if you're in real life or if you're just in a video.
Kind of like the Matrix, yeah.
Then at that point, then I could see people having like the right to be like, oh,
yeah.
like,
well, in that case, you're absolutely correct about that. I think that's a little when it goes that far, and it's very tough to tell. I mean, yeah, I'd have to agree, and you're physically carrying out the act now, like instead of mindlessly smashing buttons, in my opinion. So it's kind of more or less like a muscle memory thing at that point in time, which can be bad. So no,
did
I
you
completely agree
see
with
that like makes me think, did you see like the most recent Black Mirror season?
that. No, I'm gonna be honest, I have not.
Dude, this would be an interesting topic for episode. Just watch the most recent season. One of the episodes is about a video game, and it's basically about these two guys who are huge fans of this fighting game, which is like, it's basically like a Tekken game or something.
Yeah.
And then a new one comes out, and it's a virtual reality version. And then they get in there, and the one guy chooses this like Asian guy who looks like Ryu or something, and then the other guy chooses this female character, and they like start fighting, and then randomly the guy, spoiler alert, randomly the guy who chose the female character like jumps on top of the other guy and starts making out with him, and then they end up like hooking up, and then after they're done, like it's just kind of like mad awkward because like, yeah, in the video game this dude hooked up with a girl, but the person who like is the soul behind that girl is a dude. So it was just, and they were like best friends with each other, like real close friends. So that ended up like making things super weird.
Awkward, yeah.
and then they kept like choosing to come back into the video game and continuing to do it, and then it affected their real life relationships with like,
man, that's super
women.
messed up. That's why I stopped watching Black Mirror, because
dude,
it gets so heavy, and it just like it gets me depressed sometimes.
I think more people need to watch Black Mirror because people need to be prepared for what's coming, man, and a lot of that stuff could potentially happen at some point, and we need to start thinking about, do we want technology to continue getting better? Because I feel like we finally reached the point where the better technology gets, the worse our lives actually are getting now.
Yeah,
like to some degree,
we are from actual reality, is what you're saying.
A lot of technology is improving our standard of living, but with the rise of technology, depression has also rose. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with the rise of technology. So technology is not always a good thing. The newest, bigger, best thing is not always the way to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes more sense to keep things a little simpler.
Yeah, but if some company can take advantage of, that void and make it easier for people and automate it somehow, that they will do that and make a ton of money, and that'll be that. And unfortunately, that's just where we are in life. But I will watch the episode. Yeah, it actually is. And I will watch the episode because it sounds...
Have you heard about what they're doing in China right now?
Depends. Please elaborate, because there could be a ton of things they're doing in China.
They're actually like giving people like citizen ratings. Like,
wait, what?
If you like, everyone in China is like, their name is in a digital database by the government, I believe, and based on like the amount of crimes that you have, or credit score, I think, and like a lot of other stuff.
Are they publicly shaming people?
Huh?
Are they publicly shaming people? Is that like what they're doing?
I gotta look more into it. I don't know if they're like...
Because I know they were doing the crosswalks. Like, I know that they were doing that kind of stuff with facial recognition.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like, the fact that people can't even jaywalk there without, like, pretty much instantly getting fined.
Yeah, and then being publicly shamed as well. So...
yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it has to do... like, I'm sure they're using those scores to help certain people make decisions on, like, oh, am I going to rent my apartment out to this tenant, or like, am I gonna hire this person for my company, or like, there's so many ways that they could be using that. But it's just scary that like social media is basically becoming real life. Like, there's a Black Mirror episode that's pretty much identical to what China's
Black Mirror. There's like an episode for everything that's like actually gonna happen or is happening. It's
my favorite.
Super
it's
crazy.
One of my favorite shows.
Dude, it's so creepy. If you haven't watched it, you need to start watching it, because it's really good, but it's very dark. then it's just like every episode seems to be very dark because like you can see technology going that direction, and it's really messed up. Most of the episodes, not all of them.
Some of the episodes are talking about things that are currently happening, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's so
about
ridiculous.
Just the future.
No, not at all. Things that are happening will happen for sure. Yeah. Like it's a matter of time. But like it's sad to see it, and it's such a depressing thing to watch. That to think that one day our life's gonna get like that, possibly.
Did you watch the episode where all those little cyborg dogs are going everywhere and they're trying to kill everyone?
No, I haven't. See, like I told you, I think I got to like the end of this, maybe the end of the second season. I don't remember.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because I figured you could like kind of briefly tell everyone what you saw the other day.
What did I see the other day?
Remember the robotic dog that you were all excited about?
No, what robotic? I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
At my co-working space.
Oh yes. I don't know who was developing it, but I was able to walk into where you work at, and inside this glass room was I don't know the technical term for it, but it was like a robotic four-legged bot. You've seen it like on YouTube. Basically, it runs around on all fours really quickly, and it's really good at balancing and things like that. But no, that's what that episode was about.
Essentially, I mean, that episode is about
so creepy.
Basically, that type of thing, but just like times 100. Like it's able to scan its environment and like find people and I think like shoot lasers at them.
Did you see that a while back? And this is a while back that Facebook had bots that didn't speak the same language, and they put them in the same room, and they had artificial intelligence, so they were actually able to learn and speak in their own language to each other. And the people that were watching got super horrified because they didn't understand what they were saying to one another, and they pulled the plug.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like, crazy. I've heard a different spin on that too. Like most articles I feel like are talking about it like the way that you just kind of talked about it, where it's like a real scary thing. But there have been other articles that I read where they kind of like downplayed that whole scenario. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember there was like a similar situation where the AI actually ended up becoming racist. Did you hear about that one?
No, I did not. Like it got like it was self-aware and just like hated everything that wasn't robotic.
Yeah, I mean it was artificial intelligence that I'm pretty sure it like scanned the internet to learn how to like have a conversation and everything. I think it like scanned Twitter. And because there's like so much racism
I did see that
online, it did that. It started.
It learned that.
A lot of racist stuff.
I do. There was a bot that was in development that was able to, like, it was designed not to know what it was, like how many legs it had, and all that stuff. But it was designed to figure itself out and be self-aware. So like, it basically like moved around a lot to the point that it figured out, it has 4 legs. It has like a 2 foot long 4 leg. You know what I'm saying? Like it figured out like its shape and size by moving around so much. Dude, that kind of stuff creeps me out, man. Like just thinking about the possibilities.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was also I think it was like a robot or something. And it had AI in it, obviously. Someone asked it, like, I think what its purpose was, or I don't know exactly what the person asked this AI, but they basically said that they wanted to kill humans or something along those lines.
Wait, the AI said it wanted to kill humans?
Yeah.
Oh my
goodness, I gotta look it up, but let me see if I can look it up.
It's like the term dude. That's like my worst nightmare. That's the thing, man. Like it freaks me out to the point of no like return.
Okay, there's a YouTube video. I just found it. It says, "Hot robot at South by Southwest says she wants to destroy humans."
Wait, what? That's dude. That like it's like the Terminator theory like all over again, man. Like Skynet's trying to like, dude. I can't handle that.
I'm trying to see if I can like find the quote.
It creeps me out. Just thinking about the fact that like artificial intelligence is able to do that, figure out what it is, and then go from there. It's so crazy.
Oh, this is what happened. It could have been joking though. It's kind of like a Siri type thing. Someone at South by Southwest Festival said, "Do you want to destroy humans? Please say no." And then with a blank expression, Sophia responded, "Okay, I will destroy humans."
Oh, okay.
So I think it was just kind of like a
sarcasm,
Siri
yeah.
that probably heard the person wrong.
Something like, yeah, or yeah. At least I
But
hope
that's
it was.
still
But, yeah,
that's still kind of creepy, and it's
yeah.
kind of funny too.
It just, man, it's crazy the things that like people are coming out with, and how realistic things are starting to get. I know that they have like a woman, like almost like it's a fembot is what it is.
Yeah.
In Japan, isn't it?
I
can't.
so.
I'm almost positive it's Japan, but it's so realistic, and it turns its head and talks. It has like skin like a human. It looks like like an actual woman.
Yeah.
It's so creepy though, like because
so
it's a robot.
Your listeners, hopefully they'll give you feedback on this episode and like tell you if they were interested in any of these topics. But I have a feeling that they are going to be interested in like at least this portion of the conversation about like the whole future and like Black Mirror thing and like AI thing, because a lot more people these days are talking about that stuff online and everything. And I think at some point, if people are like interested in more in-depth conversation, like talk more about that, I think you should have Mano on at some point, because he's one of those guys that's super paranoid about that stuff. Like he brings it up with me all the time. He's like ready for doomsday pretty much. He's like one of those
he's the doomsday preppers. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's explaining to me how he's ready to potentially move to a different country like Peru if everything breaks out. And like that's like one of the reasons why he has Bitcoin, because he thinks that it's going to get to the point where the US dollar is just going to crash.
Well, I mean, like, but what would Bitcoin be worth at that point in time?
Because Bitcoin is decentralized, and they say that like no government can stop it. So
yeah, but no government backs it up. I mean, it's not federally funded, so
dude,
I don't know.
It's not me saying that. That's all. I agree.
All right,
tells me.
All right. This has been a really interesting episode, because we talked about video games a little bit, but we talked about politics, which is a complete change of pace for me, and in this podcast. And then we also talked about the future. So I'm actually excited to see what people have to say. I mean, I like talking about video games, but I also like changing it up as well and talking about some other things. So
yeah, you told everyone you're about to go on your trip soon, right?
Yeah. Well. Right. Yeah, we did actually in that last episode. Yeah. So
yeah, so just helping give you some content with you while you're gone.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's been a good one. So you're gonna plug your your social media and what you do. All
right. Well, like I said, I've been trying to remove myself from social media, so I'm not gonna give any of my personal accounts, but I'm the guy who's behind that clothing brand that the Rad Comrades have constantly been talking about on this podcast, because I sponsor them. It's called Cento-Fiori, and our website is Cento, CENTO Fiori, FIORI.com. And the Instagram tag is Cento.Fiori. So give me a follow, please. I would appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. We appreciate having you on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rad Gaming Podcast. Be sure to rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. We put out a new episode every Wednesday. And as always, stay rad, comrade.